Hey everybody, it's Jane Johnston with the Briar Hill Group at Remax Camosun, host of Vancouver Island Time and Community Talks. I'm here with Andrew Plank today for He Said, She Said, They Said. Welcome, Andrew.
Hey everybody. Wow, what an introduction. Thanks everybody. I'm Andrew Plank with LePage, and I'm happy to be here again with Jane. And we're going to talk about the last month's market stats.
How are you doing?
I am doing better than you. We're both doing well. It's been a busy market, and we're both pretty tired, I think. So, yeah.
How are your listings going?
All sold. Looking to maybe do a couple market analysis in the next little while, and have some other properties listing in the next month or two. But mostly working with buyers right now. And that's keeping me pretty hopping. And
awesome.
Honestly, I don't mind a bit of a break from some of the pace that it's been. So if it's a little slower, I'm not going to complain too much. I've got other things I can do with my life.
Well, we're going to look and see why it may feel that way today.
Mm-hmm.
I had a good weekend. I sold 3 of my 3 listings that I have right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we have one coming up this week that'll be just under an acre off Lockside Drive. So stay tuned for that one. Okay, so let's look at the stats here. Sure. Oh, add to stream. Okay, let's get it going. So when I do this, I cannot see your face, just so you know.
It's a good thing. Okay, here we are.
Do you like my new logo I made for us?
You asking me?
Yeah,
I like it. It looks like an old school stamp or something. Like, yeah, it's kind of fun. Or we can get buttons made of.
Okay, so it appears like so we were at record low inventory in January. Actually, December wasn't so bad compared to normal, but it looks like we're still really low. Correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean down around 1,400 listings, I think we are currently, and usually we're much higher than that. But we have been starting to move up a little bit in inventory, so that's good to see, I think, overall.
So if you look at the curves here, this is over the past 24 months, and you can see normally we would be up around 3,000. So we're still at low inventory, less than 50% compared to before.
Yeah.
And then the inventory, it's funny because I ran into a realtor who retired from Pemberton Home. Do you remember Carl Lutzel?
Yeah, great guy.
So we were talking, I saw him at Glow Restaurant last week. We were talking a bit about the market and what's happening. And he was saying how he really had this rhythm in real estate. And I was saying how it's changed, and it's kind of like peaks. And then there's a little bit of a bump in the fall, but generally it's being, we can actually look at it here. You can see the sales usually. The listings usually peak twice a year, and over the past few years, they've just kind of been peaking, and that's it.
Yeah, they peak in the spring, and then they kind of just gradually slow down over the summer. There might be a minor bump a baby bump, a little in the fall, but very little. And it used to be the curve was much more pronounced. You would see the big spring curve, and then it would slow down in the summer, and then you'd have a fall bump that was not as big as spring, but still significant, and then it would slow down for winter. But we've seen everything seems to be skewed and moved a lot more sort of, I guess, chaotic and a little less predictable. But overall, it's just been busy.
Yeah, and I think that the secret to being a successful realtor in a market these days is just being able to respond and anticipate basically through looking at what's going on and trying to figure out where we're going. And the quickest to respond are the ones that are being successful for their clients. So I find this graph interesting. It's a list.
Sorry, Jane, I just want to dive into that, what you said. When you say the quickest to respond, you're talking about responsiveness when the client's reaching out, responsiveness to the changes in marketplace.
Well, I personally think responsiveness to the client should be happening all the time. And
absolutely.
responsiveness to the market for sure. That's really what I was referring to. It's more about knowing what's happening with the market so you can say, okay, you know what? Now's the time. If you're going to list now.
Right.
Because,
So
or,
I like to say that real estate is a science and an art, and you can look at the stats, and they will tell you what's happened in the past. But Jane, you and I both work full time in real estate, and you get to feel that rhythm in action. And when the heat's sort of coming off a little bit. You're talking, we're both talking to colleagues. We're both seeing and feeling what it's like to have a property list, and then feel that sea change when maybe there's not as much activity as you would have thought. And so you're going to see the stats before the stats are published, in a sense, and be able to advise our clients, well in advance is really helpful.
right. And so just anticipating what's going on with the market. And obviously right now things are kind of wavy, I would say. We have to, so what we do is we negotiate price a few times. We negotiate it with the seller when we're listing it. We negotiate it with the buyer when we're selling it. And then we negotiate it if we're going to do a price change at some point. And so just looking at seeing where the market is and what's going to bring in the offer. Also, as a buyer agent, just sort of anticipating, like I find if you're not in, if you're not jiving with what's happening in the market, sometimes in the past for me, I've been like, oh, this house is way overpriced, and then it sells.
Yes. And that's sometimes because there's an agent or a buyer coming, like an agent who has a more optimistic view of the market than perhaps 99% of their colleagues, or a buyer who is either not savvy, has come from another area and isn't being well advised, or just really doesn't care. They've got the money to burn and they really want that property. So what I start to see, and I'm starting to see this right now, when I feel like there's a change coming in the marketplace, it feels like you referenced this earlier, things start to get a little more scattered. You start seeing properties sell for lower than you kind of thought they might, and then you still see properties selling for more than you think they might. And it's just starting to everything's kind of diverging a bit. And you've got the folks who are still running on the assumptions that we're still in a really, really busy market. And then we also have people who are recognizing or being able to benefit from maybe a property that lists and doesn't get as much attention as it might have thought. And those buyers are perhaps able to make an offer that they wouldn't have been successful some months ago.
Right. And what Andrew's saying is you can add conditions, or you may get some money off, or you may get the dates that you want as opposed to giving the dates the seller wants. So there's always, I would say, 5 components to an offer, and you can negotiate anything really in real estate. So I think we're coming into a point where we may be a little more flexible. So
Yeah.
and a part of that, I think, is because with the interest rate changes, things have it causes a hesitancy in buyers purchasing because they're wondering how that's going to affect the market. And so then it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
There's always that little pause when there's governmental change where people sort of stop and look around and look at each other in the eyes and say, oh, are you going to move? Who's going to make the first move here? What's happening? And then it seems like the market then starts to breathe again and everybody goes back to business as usual. But there's always that pause when there's a governmental change. Sometimes it has a profound impact, but most times it just has the impact of a bit of a pause before people get back to, I find, business as usual.
So also, I just want to say, there's the curve, the early adopters and the late adopters, and then there's the average person. And so a few things that I noticed that are happening right now. One is when I'm looking at this graph, I see a lot of people listed in March and April, and we're up around numbers used to be in terms of total new listings compared to where we were 2 years ago. And last year in June and July. So I think we're experiencing a regular spring market, but So those are the solid bars, and then the line are the sales. And what I'm seeing is we had above average sales happening in January, February, March,
Yeah.
and April. And now we're kind of moving back down more into a balanced market, which we'll see.
Yeah, well, we're having less sales every month consistently since, like, after a peak in March, we're having less sales in April, less than in March, and less in May than in April. And presumably, if that trend continues, it'll be, we'll see June as less sales, as well as we see still a lot of listings coming. So that's going to keep our inventory growing and hopefully get us back to a healthier spot. I want to touch on something we were talking earlier, and for those listening who are thinking, oh, great, now whatever comes up, I can perhaps put some, more conditions in my offer, or I don't have to pay above asking price. In any market, and a good property comes up, it's going to be the one that gathers the most attention from the most buyers, and those people are going to compete for it. It's just going to be that there's more noise in the mix now, and more of the average homes are going to be, not exactly lost in the crowd, but not seeing as much attention. So there is going to be more room for conditions and price, perhaps some price negotiation on those. But for the right property, in any market, you still have to fight for it. And that's one thing that a lot of people forget or think, oh, great, it's now a buyer's market and I can just buy, I can negotiate anything. But that's not the case.
Yeah, it's definitely not a buyer's market. We're going to see that.
And just to turn that around, it's also, even in a seller's market, it doesn't mean you can name your price.
Right. And so what's happening is, people, remember I was telling you about the list to sale, and then the mistake people make is where they list here and now they're selling here. So they're going back to the old strategy. But so really you want to list where you were listing previously, because you're still going to get that interest. But if you list up here, you're going to really limit your buyers.
Up there, meaning in the area where there might be, 5 to 10% of the buyers in Victoria looking at that property. It's priced higher than what the average buyer is willing to pay.
Yeah, price higher than the 30%.
Yeah. That
are looking. So the other thing is you can still see we have huge numbers here. Like last spring, we were really, really low, and then we bounced back in the fall at 900 sales approximately a month. And we were up around 1,200 in March, and we're now just last month, just over 1,000. So it's still a quick market. Yeah.
Things still move really fast. And a lot of properties are still being listed with delayed offers. And I am getting notices after showing a property that may have been priced a little optimistically. They had thought that they would be receiving multiple offers, and I'm getting a message after offer day to say, hey, we're still around, we're still available. We've got we've got lots of interest, but nobody came to the table. So please bring your buyers through, bring your offer.
So that's when you see the price reductions, and I didn't put that data in. I can bring it up after. So this is the sales to active listings ratio, and you can see we peaked in March and we're coming back down, but we're still at 90%. So it's still a strong market.
Yeah. So it's an interesting stat when you say over 100% of properties that list sell. Because we reached that in that peak, we were at above 110%. So how does that work? How can you sell more houses than are actually listing? But you can, because of course you've got an inventory of homes. So more homes are selling than are listing. Yeah. Doesn't mean that if you sell a home, you have a 110% chance of selling it. If you list a home, you don't have a 110% chance of selling it. Yeah. It means.
It means don't price too high. Yeah. Oops. Okay. So now we're at single family homes, and we can see that what's happening is the pricing. Yeah. Has leveled out now.
There was a really big jump. It's kind of like the market kind of was running along in 2020 towards the end of the year, building up slowly. And then we took that, I guess, winter break we usually see in December. And then the market came back gangbusters, and it's like it just jumped a big percentage out of the blue. and it's been sitting there, consistently moving around a bit, almost looking like, although there's a bump between April and May, that doesn't necessarily mean it'll bump up again. You can see that it's been down, up, down, up, down, up.
So what's interesting is when you look at this, you can see in December, the list to sale ratio was actually very high.
Mm-hmm.
So more houses were listing, but we see that probably, like, relatively speaking, there weren't a lot of people looking. So that's why the single family homes were able to sell for less. And I've actually been very successful helping buyers buy in December just because there's less competition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, condo apartments, they have been fairly steady, moving up a bit from last year, but I would say if you were to look from a distance 20 years from now, it would look like a fairly flat line. Just
from
over
20 years ago.
Like from 20 years ahead to looking back, it would look like this.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. To me, if what it felt like was it rebounded in January, and all of a sudden a lot of properties that I was helping buyers look at, like whereas we were looking at 20 properties and none of them were selling, I'm now seeing like they're popping off more regularly.
Yeah, we have clients, we set up showings for clients. We might set up a number, 10 properties to view or more, or less. And we make requests and we try to schedule out some time. And then we make all these requests and then we get all these holes shot in the middle of these scheduled showings because we get the answers back. Sorry, that one's sold, that one's under contract, that one's unavailable. And so we end up looking at, in a really busy market, less than half sometimes of the ones we've actually requested. Which is always an interesting thing to try and plan a day around.
That's where a buyer feels urgency because all of a sudden they go from, if we're looking at 10 properties and we're seeing 7 out of 10, they don't feel the urgency. But when you go, okay, well, we've booked 10, but only 3 are actually available to see, then they're like, oh my God, I gotta write an offer. Right?
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's really, goes back to that thing we were talking about, communication earlier. It's really about keeping in touch with your clients and keeping their expectations managed and helping them to understand what's going on with the marketplace. And when someone says, can I see this property? And you get back to them and say, sorry, that one's under contract. Well, what about this one? Sorry, that one's under contract. What about that one? That one's under contract. Okay, let me go. Let's find some that are actually available. And really, we've got to just watch for the ones as they list and jump on them that day. And it means that we're really, really moving quickly. And gone are the days where we could say, let's build up a list of inventory to go look at, and we'll go look at properties, next Thursday, and choose from the best of those 20. Now we're, what's listed today? What can we go look at today and get through today before somebody else gets through it and makes an offer? The market's going fast when you start doing one-offs with clients, because now you've seen everything else. Yeah. So I just want to look at so this is the condos as compared to the townhouses. And you can see townhouses since, I would say, May of last year have done better than condos. And I think the reason for that is they don't have the shared space. They're not the cost of a single family home, and they're still reasonable. Yeah, right. The gap between homes ran up so quickly, and then the gap left the condos and townhouses behind. I still think there's lots of room for condos to come up. Townhouses have definitely been jumping up because they fit, as you said, Jane, that use profile that condos just can't match that a house gives. And it's interesting, because we were just talking about appraisals and property assessments and market analysis and trying to come up with valuation on a home where, when you're looking at comparable sales from 3 months ago, even, and I usually use a 3-month span, but in a really fast moving market, if you can find a comparable from the last week or two, it's much more relevant than something that happened, 3 months ago, and especially a year ago or what have you. So when we're looking for, evidence of what a property could sell for, we need to look at, what's happening right now, and take that
Yeah,
into
and actually,
account. But
that's so what I tell clients now when I do market analysis, which I didn't used to say, is this market analysis is good for 30 days.
Yeah.
And really, we're going to determine the price on the day of listing, because if and we've done this before, I've done this with a client. They were really smart, actually, on Christina Place in Colwood. So we had a list. Oh my gosh, sorry. We had a list, price of, I think, $550, and then the neighbor on Goldstream listed for like $545, and we're like, oh my goodness. And we thought, okay, well, we're 2 houses in. That house just came up. If we list just below that, we'll sell faster and we'll get the same client. So we listed at $540 and we sold faster and we got more money.
Yeah, because you look not just at, when we're looking to market a home, we're trying to help people establish market value, not actual value based on the past. So again, what's the market doing? And is there, not only are we looking at the sold properties, but what's your competition on the marketplace right now? If you list your property higher than the recent sales are showing, but in the mix of the actual listed competition, in a way that it's attractive, it's going to sell.
Yeah. Okay, so just looking at average house price for a townhome in September, we were around 600, and now we're up around 750. And I know, because I was looking at townhouses with clients who were selling a condo and moving into, they were looking for a townhouse, and we were just like outpriced, just suddenly outpriced. So I now say to people, if you like that home, offer on it.
Yeah. I've written on a couple of townhouses recently, competed on one that was listed in the 600 range, highs fives, actually, just under 6, in Vic West. Nice updated place. The comparables showed a recent sale in the low 5s, less than, I think, around 4 months ago. And now this one went multiple offers into the high 6s when it sold.
Yeah.
That's a significant difference. And also, I've got a property right now with clients. We're going to do a building inspection. I got to go actually open up for it at 11 o'clock today. And they're going to be doing a building inspection on this property that, the most recent sale, again, was lower than what our accepted price is. But when you look at what's actually available and what you're competing against on the marketplace as it is, in the reality of today, they're getting good value. When you look at it from the historical perspective, it's like, wow, they're paying a lot for this, but it's all relative. People always say to me, and I work with people all the time, they say, oh my gosh, prices have gone up so much. And I think I'm going to wait and see what happens. And it just seems like a lot of money to pay for a house right now. And I say to them, that's what people were saying to me 10 years ago when house prices were, and so the only way to really value a home and say if it's overpriced or not today is to look back on it 5 years from now. And 5 years from now, you're going to say that was a great deal. And you know what? I wish I'd paid that extra $25,000 to get it at that time. I'm still renting today.
Yeah.
And house prices are now average $1 million, $2 million.
It's so true. And I tell people I probably made more money owning property than I have in real estate. Because I've bought and held, and if we sold one of our homes, and it went up in value $300,000, and kudos to the buyers because they made a really good decision to purchase it. Yeah, right?
You made a big profit, but and those buyers were probably saying, well, why did this person paid X and they're selling it for Y and they're making so much money? But you were selling in the market as it was, and you made your appreciation, and now they will have made appreciation too because they would have bought that some years ago.
Yeah,
so,
they bought it 3 years ago.
Yeah, and good for them.
Okay, so this stat came out, which I always find very interesting, and I get this question a lot. Where are these buyers coming from?
Mhm.
Well, the
Yeah.
answer is they're coming from Canada.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're coming from a lot of 10% or 9% are coming from other provinces. I know that I'm working with buyers from Ontario and Alberta right now. Are you working with any?
Yeah. Well, I have recently worked. I mean, I find that Ontario and Alberta are the two provinces that most of the buyers come from when they're coming from out of province. I don't find them coming from, I would say, yeah, 90% of my out of province buyers are going to be coming from one of those two provinces.
So I just want to share this. I'll bring it up because I forgot. Oh, sorry. I just wanted to share our market stats over the past week of what's been going on. Hopefully, no, it's not on here. Oh, well, okay. So every week we get a monthly stat, which I can pull up, but I'm not going to. Anyway,
We can read it out. We can read it
the
out loud.
market looks. Pardon?
We could read it out loud if you like.
Okay, I have to go and get it.
Yeah, no, I'm just looking for the email as well. Wherever it is. There it is.
Okay.
So what do we got here? I'm going to take my eyes off the screen here so I can look at this. So we had last month, we had, so actually in the last week, we had 292 new listings compared to 220 pending listings. So we had many more listing than selling. We had 58 price decreases, Jane. So that's a significant percentage of the actual new listings when we're seeing that number of price decreases. Again, in alignment with what we're saying, we're seeing some changes maybe to the market. 5 price increases, 2 back on market. And again, 482 sold, but that's because end of the month stats. And 37 expired. So again, not everything is selling. It's gone through the entire listing contract and expiring unsold 37. So that's that. And then in terms of month to month, month over month, again, we were deep in COVID last year. So, and this is for the month of June. So keep in mind that the second set of stats from 2020 are for the entire month, whereas the first set of stats are just for this last week. So June 2021, so far we've had 168 unconditional sales compared to 808 for the whole month of June in 2020. 279 new listings versus 1,430 in June 2020. And then again, the real one that we've been talking about a lot is the number of active listings. There's currently 1,495 versus 2,698 last year. So quite a large discrepancy again, even from last year, many, many less listings, but that is edging up.
Right. I just put the visual up.
You got it there. You found it.
Yeah, I'm very visual. So
Same.
all those sales, those 482 sales are from sales a few months ago.
Yes, those represent unconditional contracts from some time in the past. Yeah. There was an interesting article today by Leo from the House Hunt Victoria blog talking about the property ladder. I thought it was kind of an interesting thing. He was doing an exploration of, he was saying that the rungs of the property ladder are getting wider and wider as property values are going up, which is absolutely true. And I thought it was interesting because he was talking about, you know, does it still make sense to jump in and use that sort of try to you know, just grab a piece of real estate, a starter property versus, you know, renting. I think it's always wise to do that. It gets harder and harder to move up the ladder as the property prices diverge. But anything if you can grab real estate and hold it, you're better off than renting any time of any day of the week. As long as you're planning to stay in that property, I would say for a 3 to 5 year span at least.
You want to explain the ladder to people who are not laymen? Who are laymen?
Well, the property ladder, I guess, is a layman's term, isn't it? But true. I'll sorry, Jane. I'll explain. So what we're talking about is not everybody starting out in real estate can afford, that waterfront property or that penthouse condo. They may have to start out with a little older bachelor suite, or they may have to start out with a starter home. And granted, they're all much more expensive, and everything is much more expensive than it used to be. If you can save up and afford and get your foot in the door, literally, of a home that you can own, even if it's not what you were dreaming of or hoping of initially, it will help you get to that dream faster, because you can then move up the property ladder from that first rung of a starter home to eventually reaching that top level of whatever your dream is. Yeah, Jane, well done.
No, I just want to say that also sometimes what happens is we have like a squeeze happening. So sometimes the upper market will come down faster and the lower market will stay the same. And so that's when a buyer can actually move up to the next rung. At that point, there'll be opportunities to move up, but you just kind of have to be aware.
That's an interesting point. Yeah. And so when we imagine this property ladder and the rungs, they're not all evenly spaced. And they move somewhat in terms of their distances. So watching that is also helpful in terms of jumping up the ladder. I've heard great examples of people, and this is risky, but when you own more than one property, this makes it a little easier. Or you have the cash if you have the cash to buy a second property and you own your first one. I've seen people, especially if you consider if someone had actually sold their home, bought a home last year, and then held on to their initial home for another year, and they were to sell it now, they would be jumping the ladder without it costing them much at all. And
because they built up so much equity.
Yeah. Because they kept, rather than buying and selling in the same market, they're buying a home at a deflated value or at the current value. And if the property values continue to go up, they can then sell their first home later for more money.
Yeah. Yes, which goes with the whole strategy of buy and hold, because I think that in the end you're averaging up, and you're going to end up way far ahead. But some people are just afraid. Some people aren't meant to be homeowners, and they're afraid to purchase. And I have clients like that. And you know what? It's okay if you want to stay in a rental and you have a different strategy, and your strategy is to invest in a different way. It's okay. We are proponents of, we're realtors because we believe in real estate, but not everybody does. So
it is a lifestyle choice, and it does mean you're locked into a certain, city, a certain type of property. If property values do change for the negative, you can get stuck there without being able to sell, without losing all of your hard-earned investments. So it isn't for everyone. There is risk. It's not always perfect. It's not always just jump in. I have a theory, because I've worked with a lot of people over the years, and I think that there are people who are either nomadic, or they want to sort of settle down and sort of build equity, kind of like a farming kind of, I guess, analogy. But the people who are nomadic, who want to travel, and they're using their discretionary income to see the world, and if it's a choice between one or the other, people will choose lifestyle.
Well, I always say to people, really, you want to buy where you want to end up in the long run. A lot of people who are going into real estate at the beginning of their lives, like in their 20s or 30s or even 40s, they're not thinking, where am I going to retire in 20 years? You can rent where you are and buy elsewhere where you're going to retire, but make sure you're part of that community. It's think the long game is what I'm saying. I'm trying to think.
I mean, you were just asking about where people are coming from, and I've worked with a lot of people who are coming from out of province, who don't plan to actually live here yet, but are buying footholds in Victoria, in a good area, good location, easily rentable condos that give them the ability to come and visit if they want, when it's not rented, but rent and keep income, and then they can eventually retire here. And they either keep that one unit, or they sell it at the time and then move parallel to something else, or up the ladder to something else.
Yeah. I totally agree with that strategy. And then they get all the income, all the equity, and then they can buy what they want when they actually decide to move here. But one thing is I would recommend that people do is just involve yourself in the community before you come in some way, because I think that's the hardest transition. It's not the house, it's the community. And so do your research. And
That's one
you
of the
can check
questions
us out.
yeah. There you go. Yeah, come check out Victoria.
Yeah.
That's a big conversation that I like to have with my clients is, what's your lifestyle? What are who do you relate to? How do you relate to it? Where do you want to, where are you going to be spending most of your time when you do come here? And what do you imagine it's going to be like? Because I've seen people come here and not integrate well. And they find, where I chose to live isn't working for me. Maybe they choose an area that doesn't really suit them, a type of property that doesn't suit them. Or maybe Victoria itself just doesn't suit them because they had ideas of how it would be and it hasn't turned out that way.
Yeah.
So, really important conversation to have, and actually ask people, one of the first things you do when we're working with out of town buyers is to, help them narrow down on the area they want to live in, because otherwise we're looking piecemeal in all kinds of areas based on properties they're seeing from their desktop computer, from their computer back in another province, and they have no sense of where that property fits within the framework of actual Victoria and their lifestyle. So being able to get a sense of lifestyle.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What you're saying is not the house, but really the community and lifestyle that they're looking for. Because although, people say, well, where's a bad place to live in Victoria? There's no bad place to live in Victoria. Really, it is fabulous everywhere. And I'm not biased. It's just you're going to have a different experience depending on, like, do you want walkability and be able to bike to work? Well, you're not going to get that in Metchosin. But if you want, rural with a view of the trees and absolute silence, then, come live in my area.
Yeah. And I've had a lot of people talking and asking about, the downtown vibe, or we have a bit of a homeless, there's a lot of people challenged with homelessness here in Victoria. And there are people who are saying, I'm not sure if I want to live near some of these trouble spots, because when I say trouble spots, there are people with drug problems in downtown Victoria and so on and so forth. There are other people, and I was just talking with colleagues about this, and I've lived in downtown Vancouver as a teenager, and I found it vibrant and exciting and interesting. You had to keep your eyes and wits about you. But there are people, who, one of my colleagues just gave an example. They sold a property downtown. They bought another property within a couple blocks away, amongst a lot of what's going on down there. And they're entirely happy with that. And I think in some ways, to each their own, and everybody's got, the lifestyle that they're looking for and comfortable with. So there's no bad places, as you're saying. Everybody's going to fit.
Yeah. I would love to live downtown Victoria and be able to, walk to a restaurant and all of that. I miss that from Toronto.
Yeah.
But
and it changes block to block in downtown Victoria. Like if you're in one section of Victoria versus another section of Victoria, it's really different vibe depending on where you are. And that it's not set in stone, but it really is a difference.
Okay, so next week we're actually going to try and get some guests in to talk about different types of valuations. We'll let you know who those guests are as we get closer to the day. We're always trying to make this show exciting and informative, probably more informative than exciting.
We have a good time with it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, the whole reason why we're here is that we're very different from each other and offer different opinions. And so we want to make it interesting to people who are purchasing. If you want more information, just give us a call. Okay, Andrew, why don't you go ahead?
If you want to reach out, I'm at 250-360-6106, or email me at info@andrewplank.com. My website is andrewplank.com. Jane, how about yourself?
Okay, so you can reach me at 250-744-0775 or at briarhillgroup@gmail.com. And I have two websites. One's briarhillgroup.com and the other one is vancouverislandtime.com, which is all about lifestyle in Victoria. So
there you go.
All right, you guys. Have a fabulous week, and we'll see you next Monday. Please, if you're on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe so that you can watch us. And we do come up every Monday morning at 10 a.m. also on Facebook. And please follow us on He Said, She Said, They Said. Have a great week.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Jane. Enjoy your week.
You too. Take care. Bye.
Bye.